The morning sky was still gray when Ruby Johnson unlocked the doors of Ruby's Place, a small diner tucked along Route 41 in Georgia. The neon "Open" sign flickered to life, humming softly like a heartbeat in the silence. She dusted off the counter, humming an old gospel tune under her breath, the kind that reminded her of her mother's hands braiding her hair in the kitchen back in Savannah. Business had been slow lately. Ever since the highway got rerouted, most truckers and travelers had stopped coming through. But she kept opening every morning at 6 a.m., because Ruby wasn't just serving food. She was serving hope, hot coffee with a side of comfort. By 7:15 a.m., the diner was still empty except for an old radio crooning blues in the corner. That's when the roaring sound of motorcycles shattered the quiet. She peered through the window and spotted a single bike pulling up. The man who got off looked every inch the stereotype. Tall, muscular, leather vest with a Hell's Angels patch on the back, long beard, and tattooed arms. Most people would have locked their doors. Ruby didn't flinch. She stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "Coffee's hot. You hungry?" she asked. The man blinked, surprised. "You ain't scared?" Ruby laughed, deep and warm. "Son, I've served drunk truckers, ex-cons, and one guy who thought he was Elvis. You're just another hungry soul in need of some grits." He chuckled. "Name's Bear," he said, extending a hand that dwarfed hers. She served him the usual: eggs, grits, sausage, and toast slathered with peach jam. He barely spoke, but Ruby didn't press. She knew the silence of a heavy heart. People wore pain like jackets, some stitched it in leather. As Bear was finishing his second cup of coffee, 2 police cruisers screeched into the lot. 4 officers stepped out, hands already on their belts. "You," one of them barked, pointing at Bear. "Hands on the table. Now." Ruby instinctively stepped between them. "Hold up," she said firmly. "This man hasn't done anything but eat his breakfast. Ma'am, he's a known gang affiliate. We've been tracking his group." "Step aside," one officer ordered. But Ruby stood her ground. "You got a warrant?" "'Cause unless you do, you're not dragging someone out of my diner like it's the Wild West. Not while he's finishing his grits." Bear looked stunned. No one had stood up for him like that in years. The officers exchanged annoyed glances, clearly realizing they couldn't push further without legal cause. With a warning glare, they left, tires squealing as they drove away. After a moment of silence, Bear looked at Ruby, eyes glassy. "Why'd you do that?" Ruby shrugged. "You looked like a man who hadn't been seen in a long time. I saw you." He didn't say much else, just left a generous tip and disappeared down the highway. Ruby didn't expect to see him again. The next morning, Ruby came in early as usual. At 6:30 a.m. She heard it again, the rumble of bikes. Only this time, it didn't stop at one. The sound multiplied, growing louder and louder until it echoed like thunder. She stepped outside and gasped. More than 200 motorcycles had lined the roadside. Leather-clad bikers, both men and women, of all ages, shapes, and skin colors dismounted in rows. At the front was Bear, standing tall with a solemn expression. "What on God's green earth?" Ruby whispered. Bear stepped forward. "Told the crew what you did. How you didn't flinch, didn't judge, just stood up. Most of us ain't had anyone stand for us in years." One of the other bikers, an older Hispanic woman with silver braids, spoke up. "So we're standing for you, Miss Ruby. They didn't come just to eat. They served. They washed windows, fixed the broken sign, painted the porch, and even installed a new espresso machine someone had donated. The crew pooled their money and filled every booth. A few mechanics in the group offered to fix Ruby's rusting old Chevy for free. Word spread quickly. Locals started coming back to Ruby's Place, curious and comforted by the loyalty surrounding it. Soon, travel bloggers picked up the story. Within a week, Ruby's Place went viral on social media, the diner that united bikers and believers. Journalists came. A camera crew from Atlanta filmed a short segment. One reporter asked Ruby, "Did you ever think that defending one biker would lead to this?" Ruby smiled. "Didn't do it expecting anything. Just figured kindness don't cost nothing. But I guess sometimes, it pays more than money ever could." One night, about a month later, Bear came in alone. "My mom used to own a little place like this in Texas," he said softly. "She passed when I was 17. I've been drifting ever since. What you did, it brought something back. Family. Faith. I forgot what it felt like." Ruby reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Well, you remember now. You always got a seat here." He left that night with a smile, lighter than before. A week later, Ruby received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a check for $100,000. No return address. Just a note. "For your courage. For your grits. For seeing me. Bear." Ruby used the money to expand the diner, build a shelter next door for struggling veterans, and start a free breakfast program for kids from low-income families. Today, Ruby's Place isn't just a diner. It's a landmark. A community. A sanctuary. A place where leather jackets and choir robes sit side by side, sipping coffee and sharing stories. And on the wall, framed in oak, hangs a photograph, Ruby standing on her porch, arms crossed, with 200 bikers behind her like an army of angels. Because sometimes, the smallest act of courage becomes the spark that ignites a movement. And sometimes, when you stand for someone the world gave up on, the world stands with you.